Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be fitting the Innov K2 dual motorcycle camera system to the BMW R1250 GS. We're going to be fitting this because we quite often get this. Okay, so let's look what's inside the box. Foam inserts, the two cameras, the front or the rear camera, they're totally interchangeable, so until you've actually fitted them and plugged them in, it doesn't matter which one you use. This is the DVR unit, so the recording unit, and this is the GPS module, so the module that records where you are, what speed you're doing, the date, the time, and those types of things. So we'll just pull out this little foam insert from around the components so you can see them a little better. So here's the DVR unit. A reset button this side, an SD card and micro USB slots on here. There is actually a microphone, although we won't be using that. And then here there are the two connections for the R rear camera and F front camera, and those go into a waterproof connection, and they have a little thumb screw attachment so that it keeps them in a waterproof position. And the two leads that come out here are your power leads. You've then got the two die-cast aluminium housed, very nicely finished, very heavy duty cameras, and those have little protective screens on them at the moment, but they are universal. Got about, I think, 5 foot of lead to them. Obviously the one that I'm fitting in the rear, this will go under my rear seat, I believe, with a little bit of Velcro on the back to stop it vibrating and rattling around. But the one on the rear will obviously have quite a bit of spare cable. The one on the front should be perfectly adequate at 5 feet. And there is the GPS module unit. I think the only thing you need to be aware of with the GPS, you don't have to fit it, but the only thing I would imagine you need to be aware of with the GPS is that you must have it clear of anything metal. I have my GoPro Hero 7 Black sometimes in a metal case, and that loses all of its GPS functionality. So I just need to be very careful how I mount that and where I mount it. So if we were just now to pull the cardboard insert out of here as well, if we can. Bits of foam. So there again is the unit. So we get a nice little Innov sticker. We get a fitting kit with a little screwdriver for removing the little panels for the SD card and everything. Some waterproofing O-rings here and the two connector screws for the camera units. And in fact, they do supply you there with some 3M to affix, I'm thinking, probably the brackets for the cameras if you need to, but we'll see when we actually get to fit that on the bike. There's an overview and a basic fitting instruction manual, plenty of videos on that, but you're now going to see another one as well. A little Innov marketing card and a little card reader, looks like a key ring or something. And there is the power transformer. So this one reduces 12 volt in down to 5 volt out for the DVR unit, and that obviously has all the cables in there. And then here are the two brackets for the camera units. Again, very good quality die-cast aluminium, good hardware, looks like stainless hardware, and they come with an Allen key ready to be able to affix them. Camera with 5 foot of cable in its connection. The DVR unit with a GPS connector and a power connector going into that end. The other camera, again, with exactly the same amount of cable. In fact, it doesn't look like exactly the same amount, so it may well be that one of those has a slightly longer lead, which is fine because there's going to be plenty of room at the back, and then the GPS unit itself. So there are the main components: the DVR unit, the transformer, the GPS unit. I'm going to say, because it's got a shorter lead, the rear camera, but I assure you they are the same cameras, and the slightly longer lead, it looks like, I'm going to use for the front camera the camera fitting kit with the camera bracket twice for each camera. So we'll see you out on the bike and we'll get the thing fitted. Okay, so we're out now by the bike, BMW R1250 GS. This will give you some idea of how I'm going to attempt to fit this Innov K2 dual camera system. This is the DC power converter, so 12 volt to 5 volt, which the DVR uses. So you can see here I've already routed the red and the black cables through here underneath the seat height adjuster, round underneath the tank, and I've brought them out here down by the battery. So this is the battery compartment, and quite simply the red connection has gone to the battery post here, the positive battery post, and the black connection has simply gone here to the battery, the negative of the battery terminal. Just remember, when you're connecting your batteries, again I keep reminding everybody, take your negative off first and put your negative on last, so that you're not using any live connections to trip and touch and spark. What I normally do is remove this negative one, then lift it up and put a sheet of cardboard between the connectors and the battery so that it can't possibly connect back up. But there's the DC unit here. Now we've got the computer unit under the seat here, and you can see I've put a little bit of Velcro on top of there. I'm not sure about that yet because there's also a heat sink underneath that, and I don't know how hot this unit gets, but I think it'll be okay, but I may rethink that at a later date. But then I've put a little bit of reverse Velcro onto the bottom of the unit there, and that should sit quite happily there, remembering that this unit needs to be 4 inches 100mm away from the DVR unit, and equally the GPS unit needs to be pretty much in an open space, so not contained in anywhere, and they say also needs to be approximately 10 inches away from the DVR unit. So we'll look at that a little bit later. I've then got the yellow feed, which is the switched feed wire from the converter unit here, and that needs to go to a switch supply so that when the ignition goes on we get a live feed through that. Now what I've got here, as people will have seen in my earlier video, and I'll stick a card at the top, Velcro down here, is my Denali Smart Can, which is the same as the Easy Can. It's a Canbus controller, and that has feeds for the front lights, which I've already fitted, the sound bomb horn, which I've already fitted. Again, there's a video for those, and I have another circuit up at the front already wired in, but not actual lights fitted yet, 4 lights. But that also comes with then this one, which is supposedly for extra rear lights. Now I don't need extra rear lights, I don't feel, so I'm going to use this as a normal switched circuit, and I'll show you a little bit later how you change that in the CanSmart software. But this will then just become a simple 1 amp fused unit to run the DVR camera. So whilst I'll do this a little properly later, the positive wire is obviously the orange wire, so that will literally go in there to switch power the DVR unit. So that hex unit sits down there on its own little piece of Velcro, so it's not bumping around anywhere or chafing or touching. Now what I'm going to do with the DVR unit, I do want the DVR unit to be under my seat, and I've checked it. There's not huge amounts of room. Certainly it won't fit down the side here. It won't fit even where the Hex Easy Can is at the moment. Sorry, the Denali Smart Can. So what I've actually done is on the back of the tyre pressure monitor here, I've just put a run of the very, very strong 3M heavy duty Velcro, which doesn't have the what I would call the material type finish. It has 2 of the pin type finishes, and that has a real positive lock to it. So what I will be doing with this unit is putting it on a side here like so, and then clipping that into place, so it's not actually going to go anywhere, but it actually then, these are the seat rests here, so once I've got all that tucked away, that will all be, and I've checked it, below the pillion seat rests, so it's quite happily going to sit there, and it shouldn't be able to move around because it is actually locked on that Velcro. So that's what I'm looking at. Then there's the GPS unit that I've got to sight. So this is the GPS unit here with its wiring. There's plenty of wire, so I could probably put it at the front of the bike, because this is the connection that it goes to. So that's the power connection here, down to the, goes into the DC connector. This one here will go to the GPS unit, and the GPS unit, as I say, ideally needs to be outside. It is fully waterproofed. So what I may do is either move that all the way to the front of the motorcycle, I've got plenty of lead there, or I may well just put it perhaps somewhere on Velcro like here or similar. I just like to keep the bike so that you don't see too much wiring floating around, but that will sort of be the fitting of the wiring in the units. Hopefully that makes sense. So the DVR unit, I'll call it the transformer, but it's actually a power converter from 12 volt to 5 volt DC for the unit. That will sit just there on a piece of Velcro. That's the switched wire, the yellow wire, which will come up here under the seat and then come into the switched power unit for the tail light from the smart can unit. And then those are your normal positive and negative, which are going down underneath the seat adjuster, down through the side of the tank and out on here to connect up to the battery. Okay, so this is my Denali Can Smart Canbus unit software. It's actually the Hex Easy Can, but it's customized for Denali. And you can see here that at the top I've got auxiliary set 1. That's my main 2 lights at the front. This is the auxiliary set 2, which isn't yet connected. The horn is enabled, so you can see I've fitted the horn. And then down the bottom here I've got the option for these rear brake lights. Well, I'm not going to use those, so I'm just going to switch that over to a simple circuit, which is just there. So we're now switched over and you can see all the brake light things are dimmed. So I now simply have a switched circuit, and the transformer unit has a 1 amp fuse in it. So I'm going to match that with 1 amp because it's a very, very light supply that the recording unit needs. And if I drop that to 1 amp, then I've got more amperage to use throughout the rest of the unit. So we'll try it at 1 amp. It may be we have to put it up to 2 amp if it keeps tripping, but hopefully 1 amp will be sufficient. Okay, so these are the clamp units of the Innov camera. They're both the same. So they have this aluminium block at the top here, which is rotatable. You can get it to pretty much any angle, and you can also make sure that it's flush here or inset like this is here. So there's plenty of movement there. These are the 2 short, there's 3 short screws that come with it, 2 for the sides, and then you can either use 1 on the front or you can use it on the bracket. There's an L-shaped bracket that comes with this. I've already fitted it to the bike, so I'll show you that when we get round to showing you where I'm putting them on the bike. I do like to Loctite these. I'm not sure that's ideal because we are putting stainless steel into an alloy or into aluminium, which may cause some locking, some permanent locking, but I'm not really looking to remove these, so I am going to Loctite them just to make sure that they don't come loose. Now, most importantly, what you also need to remember with these is the camera units come with a little piece of rubberized 3M backed, almost like a rubber tape. It has a cushion tactile feel. I'm going to actually stick that around here, and that is what then actually grips the side of the camera. Without it, you will actually find that the camera will rotate in its fixing even when it's fully tightened, but I'm pretty sure that once I've stuck this in, I'm going to need to loosen these 2 connections to widen the bracket, put the camera in, and then tighten the 2 ones to keep it there. So next I'm going to show you the 2 positions that I should be fitting the front and rear cameras to the bike. Okay, so hopefully you can see here the fitting for the camera mount. So this is the L-shaped bracket that comes with this particular part that we looked at earlier, this part with Innov and the circular piece for the camera to go in, and you can hopefully see here that I have now actually fitted the, if I can get that near to the camera, I have now fitted the tape inside there, the cushion tape. But this is the L-shaped bracket, single hole here. I'm going to use the indicator mounting bolt that goes into the indicator for that, and then I've got an elongated hole here, which you can hopefully see if I run my finger up and down it, which allows you some adjustment on it. So there's plenty of adjustment on these, and then what I hope to do is simply to put the camera mount here like so and affix it with the small screw in the back here. Now I shall do this up a little bit better in a second and show you how it actually fits, but that's the theory behind it, and then the camera will go in the back here and should fit between the indicator and the back number plate. That's the rear camera mounted, and as you can see it fits very nicely underneath the indicator and just over the number plate. Now you may have to do a lot of messing around with this. I've thought long and hard about where to mount this. It still may not be right until I've tested it and seen whether the camera vibrates or whether it jolts, but certainly you don't want to be mounting it anywhere that is in large movement on the motorcycle, so swinging arms, suspension, those types of things. So I'm hoping that this will be fairly vibration free and fairly stable. That's the rough positioning of the side. You can see I've not put the screw in yet. I will be thread locking that the same as I've thread locked all the screws, just to make sure that they stay fastened. But I'm leaving that one loose at the moment because what I want to do is route all the wires, connect everything up, and just make sure that the camera is orientated correctly. Now we'll move to the front. I'm not going to show you how the bracket goes together because that has been fairly straightforward, and it's exactly the same brackets for front and rear, exactly the same cameras for front and rear. But I will just show you on the 1250 specifically, because obviously this fitting is specific to the 1250, although it'll be similar on every bike. But I will show you just on the 1250 where I've managed to fit the front camera. So I hope you can see the bracket here now. So again, the same fitting here, but there is a lovely little hole underneath the front beak here of the 1250, which has enabled me to put the bolt through with its nut that was supplied with it, all stainless steel fittings. And then you can see I've clamped these two here. I've also put the rubberized tape inside the holder ready to receive the actual camera unit. So I'm just going to now loosen off one of these side screws to enable me to just pull that aside a little bit, which will allow me to get the camera in, and then eventually, as I say, I'll tighten those up once I've got everything else routed, so that I can be sure that I'm basically going to have the cameras up the right way, pointing in the right direction. Just one final thing on fitting of the cameras. I like to push the cable through the fitting from the front. This is the front camera here, of course, but slide the cable through the fitting, and that then gives me the opportunity to use this slight taper on the camera unit to slide the thing into nicely. So I've put the rubber coating on the inside of the bracket. I'm going to have the Innov pointing upwards, which I believe is the correct orientation. I've taken this screw completely out of here, which is always wise, because now I can pull that bracket way apart like so, and the camera unit then slides in fairly easily. Don't push on the lens. If you push on the lens, there's a fair possibility you'll push that in and lose your waterproof nature. It'll clean okay if you just wipe it on the outside, but I wouldn't certainly be pushing hard on the outside. Just separate off the bracket as you see here, and then just push the lens in. I'm just checking the camera is straight. So at this stage we've got the DVR in place, we've got the rear camera in place and wired up. Fairly simple, of course, because you've only got to remove the seat, and actually I had to remove a little bit of the tail tidy, but we'll go through that a little bit later. Now comes the difficult one, which is the front camera. So to do this properly, we're going to have to disassemble quite a bit of the paneling around the bike. Now, I have done this before on the Denali light fitting. So again, if you look at the card at the top of the screen, you'll see the detail of that. So I'm just going to get on and do this myself. I'll film it, but I'll speed the footage up because you don't obviously need to see. Boredom of the sped up footage, I'm going to reassemble the bike. So I'm just going to very quickly show you where we put the cables so that you can see precisely where they went. Not that that matters unless you've got a 1200 or a 1250 BMW, but it'll certainly help you to see how I've routed this through. And what I've done is I've actually routed it up through the fairing frame at the front here, and there's the loop there. I'm going to zip tie it to that lot of cables which are already zip tied, so that'll hold those exactly as the standard fitting. Then it drops down here by the headstock. There's another bunch of cables that come down underneath the airbox, so I'm going to actually cable tie it to those cables as well. It then re-emerges down here underneath the airbox, just here, if you can just about see that there, and that is perfectly loose. The tank is obviously going to come down in a moment, but there's brake pipes and various other cables here, and you're normally pretty safe if you tie them up to the existing cables because they've already routed them. So I will zip tie that all the way up here through this zip tie, and it'll come out here as you see it underneath the tank. Anyway, next time we see you, I shall hopefully have the bike back together and I can just show you the finished article. Okay, so before we put the seat back on, finally everything else is now back together. The seat and the side panels are off. The reason I've left those is just so we can run through exactly what I've ended up with here. So I've moved the DC converter, the 12 volt to 5 volt converter, to the back of the solenoid unit here, the large connections from the battery. The reason that I've moved it there is because I was just a bit nervous down here. This is a heat sink here, and I just didn't want to wrap that heat sink, so that is now there on a piece of Velcro, and I always ride with my seat anyway in the high position at the front and the low position at the back, but even if I put this on the low position at the front, it still clears that because it's literally only just proud of that, and it's certainly way lower than the fuse holder. So anyway, the leads from there, cable tied up, as you can see, they run down the tray here, down the side to the battery. We'll show you the battery connections in a second. The yellow wire, which is the switch wire, comes out the side here, as does the power out, come all the way up here, up underneath the channel here, and comes out in the back. So now if we look at the back, as I've said to you, the unit here is fixed with very strong Velcro onto the back of the tyre pressure monitor, so it sits below the level of the seat holders by quite a bit, by probably a good centimetre anyway. And I've cable tied now all the wires. The front camera wire is here, and inside the tray here, runs down the tray, actually along the tray and up under, mainly because I have a tracker on the bike, which is quite a large lump underneath this frame. The hex easy can is sitting below it. All of those are Velcroed down. We're now connected to the switch wire here, and the GPS unit, rather than putting it around, because this unit must be 4 inches away from this unit, and I think the GPS needs to be 10 inches away from this unit. So what I've actually done is the battery is under the triangular panel this side, and what I've actually done is taken the triangular panel off the other side and fitted the GPS unit to there. So we'll just show you that quickly, then we'll go out for a ride and show you what the camera looks like in use. So I was struggling quite a bit with the GPS unit. I had it up under the seat, but that got a irregular signal. I was having all kinds of problems sighting it. Then I realised it had to be 10 inches away, 250mm away from the DVR unit, the recorder unit. So I originally started to stick it on here, but there wasn't enough clearance between the edge of there and the edge of there. So what I've actually done now, there's a void here, if you notice, in this triangle. So what I've actually done is I've Velcroed the Innov GPS unit to the back of here with a bit of play, because I didn't want mechanics servicing the bike, or even me if I forget, to pull that off and basically wonder if I'd broken something, or at least put any strain on this wire. So I've given a little bit of slack on the wire, and as you can see, if I pull that round to the back of there, slot that on and push this in, the front one here is a rubber push fit. I always lubricate those a little with either Vaseline or a little bit of ACF 50, because that just helps you to push it in without the rubber unit pushing in. And as you can see, the screw will go in here on the side here, and the wire is just there, and I can just gently push it up underneath. So I thought that was a pretty good position for the GPS unit. Okay, so here we are on the avenue in Southampton, and we're making a test of the front and rear cameras that we just fitted to the R1250 GS. The fitting went okay, no real issues. Usual things of making sure that you've somebody decided to indicate late. Usual things of making sure that you route the wires correctly, because you don't want any of them trapping, whether they be electrical or video, or even GPS for that matter. So we can now see exactly what view that's giving us. Having said that, I've got nothing in front of me and nothing behind me, which for the avenue in Southampton is completely unbelievable. So hopefully in a little minute well, random for a motorcyclist to be saying hopefully in a minute we'll come up against some traffic, but hopefully in a minute we'll come up against some traffic, and then you'll be able to get a better idea of how this looks as its intended purpose, which is a dash cam. I'm equally hoping to use it for some tour footage. As you can see, I've got the Hero 7 Black on my helmet, where you probably can't see, but that's where the forward view's coming of the cockpit view, if you like. Then I've got a cheaper SJ cam on the left-hand mirror, which is the picture of me. And then, of course, I should have an uninterrupted view forward with the 1080p Innov K2 front camera, and hopefully an uninterrupted view of the rear with the 1080p Innov K2 rear camera. Okay, so earlier we had it mounted dead in the centre here, but I've been out on the bike now and the footage just wobbles like hell. So by no means as picturesque, but we've moved it now to a bracket on the side of the Denali lights, and I'm going to go out and test that footage to see if that's any smoother. And if it's smoother, I'm not happy with it there particularly, because it just sticks out a lot and is very visible, but I need to get it out that far to miss the beak on the front of the bike. So so we'll try it like this, see how we get on, and if it's any good, we'll keep it there for a little while and then have a rethink. So here we are then. So we're pretty much up at speed limit for this road, 40 miles an hour. The speedo of about 43 miles an hour on the speedo is actually 40 on the road. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go up the avenue, which is this sort of speed. Then I'm just going to get out onto the M3. That's a 70 mile an hour road, see if I can't get myself up to about that speed and just check that there's no resonance from where it is. It certainly should be firm, because those brackets are very heavy duty that hold that, certainly heavier duty than the rear indicator, for example, that's holding the back one. Okay, so we're joining the M3 now. We're a relatively smooth bit of road. There's very little bumps in it, so if we're seeing bumps in the video now, then we've still got a resonance issue. If we've still got a resonance issue, then our last thing we can do, because those brackets are incredibly stiff, so the only thing we can then do is to put the rubber bungs on the side and see if it really is just a vibration issue. Okay. So we had a few issues along the way, but in general I'm pretty happy with the way that's gone, and I'm pretty happy with the camera. It is an evidential camera. It's not designed as a recreational type camera, and it is a little bit unfair to compare it with the GoPro Hero 7 Black, which films at 60 frames per second, a much better frame rate for action type videography. And of course the GoPro Hero 7 Black, most importantly, has a very impressive image stabilization, which the Innov cameras obviously don't have. But it'll be great if the Innov cameras in the future film at 60 frames per second, or maybe even have an image stabilization built into them. But as I say, no real worries. I'm now happy with how they're mounted. I'm happy that they're great as an evidential camera should we have any issues in the future, which of course you always hope that you don't. So that's it. If you've enjoyed that, it'd be great if you could like it, leave comments down in the footer below, and I'd like to get back to all of those, so hopefully you'd get an answer if there are any comments. And certainly if this is the sort of thing you like, you're interested in motorcycling, accessory fitting, the BMW 1250 GS, and eventually hopefully some tours that we go on later on in the year, then hit the subscribe button. It'd be great to have you along, and if you then hit the bell as well, you'll get notified when I post my next video. So that's it for this time. Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.